All right, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Why don't we get started? Welcome to SOA Software. My name is Simon Barrere, Director of Technology here at SOA Software, based out of Los Angeles, California, our headquarters. And today's webinar is entitled Turbocharge Data Power to Reach Your SOA Goals. And hopefully everyone can hear me and everyone can see the PowerPoint presentation in the WebEx window. If you can't, please, in the chat box, just express your concern either for the PowerPoint or for audio if you're having any issues. But hopefully everyone can hear and see just fine. So today's presentation is very exciting. We're talking about DataPower and specifically how to use DataPower as the foundation of your SOA infrastructure. So a lot of folks out there, your existing DataPower users or your new DataPower users, and you're definitely interested in DataPower for a lot of its security and transformation, mediation, and high-performance benefits. But maybe you didn't know that DataPower can also be used for SOA. So not only can you use it to solve a lot of your network issues, you can also use it as the foundation for your SOA infrastructure. You can come out with hundreds or even thousands of services across many different business units to expose enterprise services out to your trading partners, and even APIs and mobile moving into the future. So there are a huge number of things that you can do with DataPower if you have the right tooling in place. And we're going to spend the bulk of this hour convincing you that DataPower is a optimal platform for SOA. And if you have the right tooling in place, and we're going to show you some of those tools, you can be very successful with DataPower and SOA. Just a quick note before we dive in. We do want to try and keep the line quiet, so if you wouldn't mind muting your phone, making sure that there's no background noise. But if you do have a question, please do unmute your line. Let's keep this interactive. Please just raise questions and thoughts as you please. You can also raise things in the chat window, and we can address things then as well and at the end of the presentation. So we just want to keep a high-quality presentation, but we also want all of your input. So please do chime in at any point if you're interested. And I believe that the lines have been muted across the board. I believe you just press #6 to unmute your particular line on the WebEx so that you can actually talk and we can address your questions. So with that, why don't we dive in? And agenda-wise, we're just going to spend half a minute on SOA software, just to let you know about us. Then we're going to talk quickly about the requirements for SOA when you're using DataPower. What are some of the things that you need to think about to ensure your SOA solution is very high quality? And then we're going to talk about how you can turbocharge DataPower. How can you add the tooling required to make DataPower the perfect platform for SOA? And then the bulk of today is actually going to be a live demo. We have a very exciting demo queued up. We have live DataPower appliances and some of our tooling in place, and we're going to show you some very cool and sophisticated use cases that you can use to bring SOA to your DataPower infrastructure. And then finally, we will close. So with that, why don't we dive in and talk a little bit about SOA software. So we're a Los Angeles-based enterprise software company, been in business for, I guess, around 13 years now. We were recently rated by Gartner very highly in the application services governance space, best vision for API management and best vision for SOA governance. So definitely nice to see the recognition that Gartner and other industry analysts are giving us in terms of the hard work we've been doing to bring SOA to the IBM platform. We've also been doing a lot of fantastic work around API, which is very much a forward-thinking area that we're investing heavily in and helping our customers make progress on. Our offerings are very comprehensive, very well integrated. We'll give you a huge range of SOA and API features out of box. We're also a IBM business partner. We work very closely with IBM on the DataPower platform and other platforms to ensure that the IBM suite of products, which are extremely powerful for solving all sorts of enterprise problems, can also be used for SOA and API, and that's a huge part of what we're talking about today. And if you want to learn more, please do visit us at www.soa.com. Great website. We have a lot of material there. We have press releases. We have data sheets. We have white papers. A lot of good information around DataPower, around APIs and SOA and IBM and all the different areas that we engage in. So definitely a great place to spend some time. So that's SOA software. Why don't we dive in and start talking about DataPower, because this is the key interest for today. And specifically, let's talk about what it takes to bring DataPower into a SOA environment. So fundamentally, the goal here is to be able to use DataPower for a large-scale SOA environment. And so what that means is you want to refactor your back-end infrastructure, all the different applications and services. Perhaps they run on mainframe, perhaps they run on WebSphere or WebSphere. You want to be able to make those available. You want to make those available to your internal users, to external business partners, to trading partners, to mobile and cloud, to make sure that iPhone and Android and other mobile apps can access your back-end resources. So that's overall the goal, and it means that you want to come out with tens or hundreds or even thousands of different services owned by a large number of people, all built according to agreed-upon standards within the company in terms of security and best practices and so forth. So that's a really large goal, and it's a really important goal because if you can come out with a SOA program like that, you'll have huge benefits in terms of time to market, in terms of cleaning up your infrastructure, in terms of cost savings, in terms of reducing lack of reuse and making sure that your infrastructure can be reused by the largest number of people. So there's a huge, huge win for turning your environment into an SOA environment. And DataPower can be and play a huge role in doing that. And you can see some of the requirements here, some of the things you have to think about before you go down the road of trying to be successful with DataPower on an SOA platform. And you can see some of the bullets here. One of the key ones is service lifecycle. So you want to be able to control all the aspects of your DataPower service, not just the creation of it, but every aspect from planning all the way through to deploying it out to DataPower and managing it and maintaining it, troubleshooting it and operating it, and then finally retiring it at some point in the future. So the topic of service lifecycle is extremely important. Automation is also a hugely important area. You want to make sure that you're not spending all your time trying to do all this management, trying to deploy all these services. It takes a lot of effort. A lot of it's very much repeated effort. A lot of it requires a lot of accuracy, which we humans are not so good at, but computer systems and software systems are good at. The more you automate, the more that you can spend time working with the business on high-quality issues. You can work on architectural concerns. You can work on planning out the future and helping the business to succeed. There's no good reason for you guys to sit in front of DataPower keyboards all day trying to get services to work. So automation is a huge, huge part of an SOA platform for DataPower. Scalability is also very key here. You want to make sure that what you can do for one business unit, you can do for 10. What you can do on one DataPower appliance, you can do on 100. Most importantly, what you can do with one service, you can do with 1,000. So on paper, it's fairly easy to plan out how you're going to use DataPower on its own to build out SOA services for one service. It's not that difficult to do, and you can sit down and spend a day or a couple of days coming out with a service and talking about the workflow and so forth. When you scale that to 2, maybe things will work. When you scale it to 5, things start getting a little difficult. But certainly when you scale it to 50 or 100 or 1,000, you start feeling the weight. All of these services need to be deployed and managed and controlled in a similar way. Being able to do that for 1,000 different services, let's say, that's owned by, let's say, 10 different business units or even used by different trading partners and folks out in the cloud, it becomes an extremely difficult proposition, and you get yourself into trouble really quickly. So scalability is a huge issue for SOA adoption on the DataPower platform and something that you're going to want to think about. And finally, you're going to want to make sure all the great SOA features that are the sort of the trademark of SOA are available on your DataPower platform. Things like monitoring, clustering, security, SLAs, and a host of other value-added features. These are things that may not be available to you out of box, may be difficult for you to implement easily. So definitely having access to these features at the tip of your fingertips is really, really important for an SOA program using DataPower. So that gives you an idea of some of the key requirements, some of the key things that you need to think about in terms of SOA on DataPower. Moving on for that, we want to move into this topic of how can you turbocharge DataPower? How can you turn DataPower into a real SOA appliance that can solve all these different problems that we've been talking about? And the way that I want to approach this, you have a couple of slides here. I'm going to kind of walk you through how SOA software can turbocharge your DataPower infrastructure, how we can shift your infrastructure into top gear so that DataPower unleashes all of its power, because we know that they're very, very powerful appliances, but it does take time and effort to expose that power. So I want to walk you through a couple of slides to show you how things change over time. So on this slide here, you can kind of see what a typical DataPower service looks like, an SOA-based service on DataPower. And you can see it has a front and has a back and deals with things like REST and mainframe and HTTP. And it also has a middle. And the middle is a really key part of what happens on DataPower. And essentially what your goal is to use all the rich DataPower features to fill out that middle, to create a live working service that's very rich. It has all the right mediation and security and so forth, So essentially, you're going to go and figure out how to leverage all these great features, things like mediation, AAA for security, transport concerns, transformation, and the list goes on. DataPower has a very rich feature set. This is why you purchase DataPower, or this is why you're considering purchasing DataPower. So you want to bring all that rich feature set to bear on your DataPower service. So what are some of the things that you're trying to solve inside your service? Well, you're trying to solve things like monitoring, quality of service, orchestration, security, probably moving into mobile API, if not now, then into the future, dealing with things like mediation. So all these different solutions that you're trying to solve. And, it's important to note here that we're calling these solutions for a reason. This is not drag and drop. There's no place to drag and drop a security solution onto your service from DataPower. You need to design this. You need to build this. You need to, bring the right objects and configurations to bear in DataPower to make this work. And it's not trivial at all. For any of you who have hand-built DataPower services in the past, it takes time. You have to plan, you have to design, you have to troubleshoot, and then you have to roll that out across the board. So there's quite a bit of effort involved here. And fundamentally in red, you can see kind of, what that action looks like. You're essentially making connections between the DataPower feature set and all the different solutions that you're trying to come out with. And we draw these lines in red on purpose because it is a very challenging part. It's something that you pretty much don't want to be involved in when you need to scale out to 100 services across 10 different business units. It's really not a mode that can scale into the future. It's not cost effective. It's not according to enterprise standards and so forth. So these red hours, they're a bit troublesome. You can get your services to work, but why would you if you have a better way to do this? So that's where some of the key questions come into play with this current mode of using DataPower for SOA. Questions like, do you guys have the time and expertise to do this, right? This takes a long time, and it requires very deep DataPower skill. Do you have all of that, and can you scale that out across your plans moving into the future? Is it manageable and cost effective? So this is an important question for folks who are managing budget, trying to figure out what's needed into the future. Is this an easy thing to manage? Do you have full lifecycle support? Is it cost effective, or is it going to cost you a lot of money per service to actually get the service out and then maintain it? And then, of course, the scalability part. We talked in depth about that. I think you guys will all agree that, for a lot of these questions, the answer is basically no. It's not. You don't really have the time, and you don't have enough expertise within your organizations to roll this out across, let's say 500 different services. It's not particularly manageable, and it is fairly expensive, and it is difficult to maintain over time as you need to make changes to any of these solutions inside of any of these services, and it definitely doesn't scale. So definitely there are some challenges with this current setup. So let's take a second stab and see how we can change this picture to redress some of these open concerns. We have the DataPower feature set, which you guys are using today. Why don't we layer on top of that the SOA software feature set, which you can see at the top. And fundamentally what we do is we leave your picture intact, we just make it better. So what we're doing with the SOA software feature set is we're adding higher level constructs to your DataPower infrastructure, things like service lifecycle, which we talked about, things like policy-driven approach to services, automation, which we talked about, SOA and API features, which we talked about, and management. So all these important higher level features that you're absolutely going to need to run your SOA infrastructure, we can add as a feature set on top of DataPower. So same great DataPower, but we're adding these new feature sets on top. And fundamentally, the way this picture works is we're still leveraging the full DataPower feature set to come out with these services. You can still see the red lines in place, even with SOA software in the picture. But the way that it's changed now is that in green, we are now driving the production of these solutions, these SOA solutions for these services in DataPower. Fundamentally, we let you define at a high level what it is you're trying to solve in terms of monitoring, in terms of security, in terms of mediation, in terms of transformation, in terms of mobile, and so forth. You tell us what you're trying to solve at a high level. We make it work on DataPower. And this allows you to scale greatly. This allows you to automate. This allows you to use DataPower as an SOA solution across your entire infrastructure. So fundamentally, this is our approach to SOA on DataPower, and it's a very, very effective approach because of our ability to solve a lot of these open challenges that you guys are thinking about today in terms of leveraging DataPower for SOA. And so fundamentally, the picture for you looks a lot like what you're seeing here. A lot of the red hours are gone. They're still there, but we're managing them for you, so you don't have to involve yourself there if you don't want to. And fundamentally, you're seeing the world through a new lens. You're seeing it through SOA Software's lens. We're going to see our solution in just a moment. You'll see how easy it is for you to define your SOA, define all these different features that you're interested in, and then automatically deploy them out to DataPower. So fundamentally, this is our approach to helping you guys tame your DataPower infrastructure, unlock the power of DataPower, and use DataPower for your SOA infrastructure needs. Are there any thoughts or questions about that so far? Okay, great. So let's keep on going. We're almost done with the slides here. So fundamentally, if we bring the questions back on the table, is this manageable and cost effective? Is this maintainable and scalable? And do we have the time and expertise to do this? I think once you see our demo and learn more about how our product set works, you'll answer absolutely across the board. You can, with using SOA software, definitely very easy to manage, extremely cost effective. We can bring down the cost of your DataPower services by a factor of 10 or more. Very easy to maintain over time. You can make changes to your services and have them rolled out very, very quickly. Absolutely scalable. You can run a DataPower infrastructure of 50 appliances. You can run 500 services or 1,000 services. You can roll it out to the entire enterprise, to your trading partners, to the mobile world, to the cloud. Extremely scalable in terms of bringing all of these different pieces to bear on your goals for the future. And then do you have the time and expertise to do this? Absolutely. And you have even more time. Your time is now freed up. You can focus on the future. You can focus on where DataPower is going in terms of its feature set, where your users are going, where your business units are going, and your sponsors, your trading partners, and so forth. This is going to help you to move forward much, much more quickly and with agility and cost effectively to actually realize all of your different SOA goals. So happily, with a SOA software feature set on top of DataPower, you now have a turbocharged DataPower that's going to be very, very effective for solving your organizational problems across the board when it comes to SOA. So hopefully that gives you an idea. We're trying to move quickly here, so we'll move over this slide pretty quickly, but you can kind of see what the future state looks like. We're going to help you to manage the entire life cycle of your DataPower infrastructure, from plan to build to run to share. We don't have time to go into all the details here, but we did talk about a number of these different pieces. But fundamentally, our product set is fully integrated with each other and with DataPower to help you to realize this kind of a ambitious solution on your DataPower platform. So just to wrap things up, the benefits of SOA software for your DataPower infrastructure includes things like fully leveraging DataPower for both SOA and API, so you don't have to want anymore in terms of the SOA features and goals that you're looking for. You can easily manage your entire service lifecycle. You can gain all the functionality you need for SOA and API, and we're actually going to show some of that functionality in the live demo. You can definitely save money. It's a huge, huge win from a budget standpoint. It also allows you to use your resources more effectively, again, work with the business, architect new solutions, roll out new solutions. There's no good sense for you guys to be struggling today with your DataPower infrastructure. You should let a tool set do that for you and let you focus on what's really important, which is the business. And of course, getting back to scalability, consistently bring out large numbers of services. These could be owned by lots of different people. They can have lots of different varying requirements, but they can all be rolled out very efficiently, very cost effectively, with an eye to enterprise standards and so forth. So definitely, as you scale up and you leverage more and more DataPower, we're going to be there with you to ensure that things work properly. So that's about it. Hopefully that gave you an idea of where we're coming from in terms of DataPower and how we can help you guys to start building out your SOA infrastructure. We're going to dive into the demo now, and here are some of the things that we're going to go through. We're going to kick off with some service virtualization to show you how you can use our virtualization technology to deploy services to DataPower. We're then going to show a little bit of monitoring on DataPower. We're going to move into topics of security and contracts, which are very powerful features that will help you to ensure that your DataPower environment is locked down. We're going to talk a little bit about user-defined policy and show you how you can introduce your own custom DataPower configuration within your services. We're going to talk about service promotion and clustering, which is an important topic that you guys struggle with today in terms of how do you make sure that services are consistently rolled out across all of your environments during promotion time and deployment time. We're then going to move into REST, and then we'll show some REST to SOAP. This is a very ambitious agenda, and we have only about 45 minutes now. We're going to move fast. I really hope we can make it to the end. If we can't, we may end up going over, or we can save this for a future presentation. Definitely a lot to show, a lot of exciting features. So why don't we dive in, and let me share my desktop, and then we can start. Give me a moment to fix my screen here. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. If you can't see it, let me know. And what you should see on my screen is you should see a web user interface. And this is the interface that we're going to be using extensively over the next 45 minutes or so. So what you're seeing here is our Policy Manager product. And Policy Manager is a runtime register repository, which means that it's a central place, a central home that you can go to model all of your services. And it's fine-tuned to the needs of runtime and to DataPower. So it understands exactly what it is you're trying to model in terms of your services. And we're going to use this extensively over the next 45 minutes to show you how you can model your DataPower services and how you can roll your DataPower services out and get all the features that you are interested in. And I want to point out a few areas. Now, Policy Manager is a large product, does a lot of different things. I can't possibly show you everything, but I'm going to point out a couple of areas that we're going to be focusing on over the course of the demo as we start getting things working. On the left-hand side here, you have what we call the organization tree. And the organization tree essentially lets you break out your users into organizations. And these could be trading partners, these could be internal groups, and so forth. So this is a great way for you to break down your organization into ownership and let different people own different parts of the SOA infrastructure. And I've created a fictitious company here called SOA Bank. Let's make believe that we're part of SOA Bank. We're a large multinational financial services company, and we have all sorts of business units, things like insurance and mortgages. And we just invested in DataPower. We're very excited about leveraging DataPower for the future of our SOA, but we need help for all the reasons that we talked about earlier. So we're going to talk about how we at SOA Bank can start leveraging SOA software to unlock the power of DataPower for SOA. And within SOA Bank, we're going to be looking at a couple of different organizations here. We have enterprise IT, we have insurance, we have mortgages, and so forth. And essentially within any of these different organizations, you have folks who own them. And then inside of these, you have a bunch of different objects that you use to model your SOA. And that includes areas such as services, which is where you actually model your SOA services. We have contracts where you model what are called security contracts, and we're going to show those a little bit later. Policies are a huge part of what we do at SOA Software. So there's a whole area called policies, and we're going to delve into that quite deeply. And perhaps most importantly, you have containers, and this is where DataPower lives. So we model your SOA as a series of DataPower containers that you represent inside a Policy Manager and that you can use to host your services and understand what's going on inside the world. And for the purposes of today's demonstration, we actually have some DataPower containers, and you can see them down here. And these are actually mapping to live DataPower appliances running on the network. We have XI50 appliances that we're using here. And essentially, we have two different clusters, dev and prod. And if I open up my dev cluster, you can see I have a single DataPower domain here that we're calling DataPower Appliance Dev, and this maps to a single DataPower domain. So fundamentally, what we're doing is we are abstracting the DataPower appliance as a container in Policy Manager, and we're letting you host services on that container that you create within your services categories inside of Policy Manager. So fundamentally, the use of Policy Manager is to model all your services and then host them on DataPower, and then have value-added functionality like monitoring and other feedback inside of Policy Manager. So let me actually show you some of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the service category within this SOA Bank, and we're going to make believe that we have an existing backend service that we're calling SOA Bank Stock Quote SOAP. So this is an example of a SOAP-based stock quote service that SOA Bank uses internally and uses with its trading partners. And it's what you expect. You send a quote to it, a symbol like IBM or Apple, and it will return the latest quote data for that particular symbol. And this is used by different applications in order to add value to those applications. And this is what we call a physical service, which means that it runs on the back end. This is not a DataPower service. This is a back-end service. This could run on the mainframe. This could run on WebSphere MQ. This could run in WebSphere Application Server or a variety of different application servers. So wherever it runs, we represent it as a physical service. Fundamentally, what we want to do now is we want to use DataPower to expose this service. We want DataPower to do things like security and transformation and so forth. So what I want to do is I want to do something called service virtualization. Policy Manager has first-class support for this notion. The idea of a virtual service is a service that doesn't have an implementation, and it runs in a gateway like DataPower. So what I want to do to expose this backend service on DataPower is I want to virtualize it. There's a link on the bottom right here where you can actually see virtualized service. I'm going to click on that link, and it takes me through a wizard, and it asks me what I want to call it. And we'll use a convention here. I can name it whatever I want. We'll use a convention here. I'll put a DP at the end of every service that is hosted or intended to be hosted on DataPower. So I give it a name, click Next. I say I want to select a container later, which we'll do in just a moment, and I click Finish. Okay? So this is about all it takes in order to create a new virtual service for DataPower. And there it is represented here, and it fully virtualizes this stock quote service. So essentially, it's like a proxy for this backend service. If you send traffic to DataPower, DataPower will enforce policy, and then it will forward it to the backend. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some value to this service. I want to add some monitoring support. A lot of the ways that we add value to services on DataPower using SOA software is through policy. Policy is an extremely important concept within Policy Manager, hence the name. What I can do here is I can go to the policy attachments part of this service, and I can actually choose different policies that I want to attach. And these policies are all high-level, declarative, defined policies. You don't have to figure out how to actually do it. We do that for you. You just tell us what you want. I'm going to click on the Manage link, and I'm going to navigate into my SOA Bank organization, and I'm going to find different policies that I'm interested in. And you can see I have a whole bunch of predefined policy that I've prepared for this webinar, and we're going to look at these throughout the demo. But I want to start with just one policy, which is called SOA Bank Auditing, and I created this policy for SOA Bank. It is a monitoring policy. It allows us to monitor services on DataPower. All I need to do is select it in order to attach it to a service, and click Apply, and there you have it. It's there, and it's now available. That's about all I want to do for now. So my next step is to host this on DataPower. This is very easy to do. All I need to do is go find the DataPower appliance that I'm interested in. In this case, it is my dev cluster. Okay, so I simply click Host Virtual Service. Okay, so essentially every DataPower container can host 0 or more virtual services, as many as you want. And it takes me through a wizard, and it asks me which service do I want to host. So I'm going to go find this brand new service that I just virtualized, this stock quote service, and I select it. And when I select it, it's going to ask me which front-side handler on DataPower I want to use, and I have defined an HTTPS one for security. So I'm going to choose that one. I click Next, and I need to give a URL on DataPower, so let's just use the service name for now. Click Finish. Okay, and there you have it. The service is now hosted on DataPower, but there's one last step. We also need to deploy it to DataPower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to an administrative screen that helps me to control deployment to DataPower, because mind you, we haven't talked to DataPower yet. DataPower is not yet aware that this service needs to be hosted. So I'm going to switch to a second screen here, and this is my administrative screen that allows me to control my DataPower infrastructure. And you can see I have my DataPower appliances defined in the left-hand pane here, and these exactly map to the containers that I have inside of Policy Manager. So I have Dev, Prod 1, Prod 2, okay? Dev, Prod 1, Prod 2. And so I can now go in here, and I can control the deployment. And as you can see here, I have a sort of a queue that allows me to track which services need to be deployed, and then I have a history of what's actually been deployed. And you can actually see that this new service has just been deployed. So we get instant feedback that we communicated with DataPower, and we get all the results. And you can see over here, just a minute ago, we deployed the service, and it was successful. Okay, so that's great news. So fundamentally, we were able to take this service that we defined in about a minute, and we were able to deploy it to DataPower. Now that it's deployed, I should be able to go and call it and get my stock quote result. So what I want to do is go call the service. You can see the URL of the service over here. It's running on my DPO2 DataPower appliance on port 13450. Oh, sorry. On 13450, and here is the access path. This is all defined up front according to everything we went through with our wizard. What I want to do now is I want to go to a client tool. For this demo today, we'll be using SOAP UI, which is just a stand-in for a client. This, you can think of this as your portal or a web app or a mobile device or whatnot. This is going to be our client for today. And what I can do is I can go to my service, and I can queue up my my endpoint, and I can actually, sorry, wrong area. Okay, and I can have my request message, which is my stock quote request for IBM, and you can see I'm going to the exact same place we just talked about, HTTPS 13450 SOA bank stock quote. Okay, so I think I'm ready to go, and I'm going to send traffic to DataPower. So I click the send button in the top left here, and it's hitting DataPower, and it's giving me a result back. The result back that I'm getting is a fault, which means that DataPower does not like this transaction. So what I want to do is point out something. When it comes to faults on DataPower, our monitoring solution allows you to very easily track what's going on. Because we're having a fault here, I want to go back to Policy Manager, click on my service, and I want to click on the Monitoring tab in the top right here. When I click on the Monitoring tab, I have a section called Alerts, and Alerts will give me a list of everything that's been happening on DataPower recently. So we actually collect live feedback from DataPower, and we store it for you so that you can view this in one centralized location. It doesn't matter if you have one appliance or 50 or 100. They all wind up here. It's very easy for you to go in and figure out what's going on. So let's look at some of these alerts and see what's going on in DataPower. I'm essentially double-clicking each of these rows, and we're seeing we're getting a AAA authorization failure. Let me keep on clicking, and I think I know what's going on. We are getting feedback that what's called contract authorization is failing on DataPower. DataPower is saying, I can't let this go through because contracts are failing. This is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about contracts. In Policy Manager, every service has to have a contract. A contract is an agreement between a client and a service that says the client can indeed access the service. So it's a very powerful security construct. If you don't have a client, if you don't have a contract, you don't get to call DataPower. So that's fundamentally the problem that we're having here. To try and fix this problem, what I want to do is go to my contracts area in Policy Manager. I want to go to one of my existing contracts, and I'm going to add this new service as a member of this contract so that we can actually let traffic go through. And what I want to do is I want to manage contract scope, and I want to go select the service, which is this new service I just created on DataPower, to be a service that's a part of this contract, with the idea that if it's a part of this contract, now DataPower can finally let the traffic go through. So I click Apply, and I click Activate for my contract, and so now my service is a part of a contract. So what I want to do now is go back to my SOAP UI and try a second time, and there you go. I get a result now. So DataPower let the service transaction go through because contracts are now enabled. It did its policy enforcement. It did its monitoring. It sent the traffic to the back-end system. The back-end system returned $28.99, and DataPower returned the result back to us. So this is actually a really big milestone. We've been working on this service for, I don't know what, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, I suppose. I've also been talking a lot, probably too much. And in that short period of time, we have a fully fledged service running on DataPower. And more than that, we have monitoring enabled. And we have some security as well, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. But to show you the monitoring, if I click on the monitoring tab and I click on the logs, I can actually start seeing some of the message traffic that comes through. I can also see the contract that was involved because we added this SOA Bank anonymous contract. If I double click on my logs, I can actually see a lot of information about each transaction that goes through DataPower. I can also go to what's called recorded messages, and I can see the request message that came in to DataPower, and I can see the response that came back out of DataPower. So I'm getting a lot of feedback. And this is all policy driven, so you don't have to enable this, but I'm enabling it for the purposes of the demo, so I get a lot of good insight. Another area that we support is what we call real-time charts, which are live metrics coming in from DataPower. You can see over here, this is where a fault came in. You can see over here, this is where my successful transaction came in. Let me actually go back to SOAP UI. Let me kick off a load test. That's going to start pounding DataPower with traffic. And we should be able to pick up pretty quickly that DataPower is indeed being pounded and is experiencing high TPS throughput. This is all live. So this is live feedback from DataPower that we capture and that we make available to you. If we give this a couple more seconds, we should see some of the feedback starting to come in off the right side. Once again, this red dot represented the contract failure that we saw. And then this guy over here represents the successful transaction. And these guys represent real lows. So this is indicative of what your production environment will look like. On the bottom here, you have the throughput, and on the top here, you have the length of time that transactions are taking. You can see they're taking about, on average, about 7 milliseconds, 8 milliseconds on DataPower, and we're getting very high throughput, 400 transactions per minute, 300 transactions per hit, and so forth. This is very valuable to get a instant touch feel for how busy a service is, and this is broken down by service, so you don't have to go figure out what DataPower is doing based upon its overall CPU. You can actually see it on a per service basis. So let's kill this test, okay, and let's keep moving forward. Before we go in further, are there any questions so far? Okay, good. Hopefully we're not going too fast. Again, we have loads of stuff to show, and I want to try and get through it. If we are going too fast, please just let me know, and we'll slow things down. So the next thing that I want to do is, we have the service running. This is great news. This is very powerful. And we have some monitoring, which is also great news and very rich. Let's now do security and make things interesting. What I want to do now, and by the way, I want to go back, and I wanted to turn off my queue, and I'll show you why later. But what I want to do now is I want to attach some more policy so I can enable security. And essentially what I'm going to do is go back to our policy attachment friend. This is where we modify a lot of behavior because we want to add even more behavior. I'm going to click on Manage, and I'm going to add some more policy. I'm going to add what I'm calling SOA Bank two-way HTTPS authentication policy and two-way HTTPS transport policy. So I simply check these two, and I click Apply. And essentially what these two guys do is they add two-way SSL. And this is a very popular pattern. DataPower folks love using two-way SSL. It's very powerful. DataPower does it very, very well. So I want to show you how we can fully automate two-way SSL. And essentially what these two policies are doing, the first one is requiring that there's two-way SSL. DataPower won't accept transactions without it. The second is actually authenticating and validating the certificate from the client that goes through to ensure that it's a valid user. So we have a very nifty way of authenticating and turning a client certificate into an identity that you can then represent inside a policy manager. And this is a good time to talk about our SOA Bank trading partners. This is another organization that represents all the folks that SOA Bank does business with on the outside. This could be third-party mortgage companies or who knows who else. And the reason why we created this is because we want to represent all the different users out in the trading partners in here. And I've done that down here within organization identities. I've created two identities, SOA Bank Trading Partner 01 and SOA Bank Trading Partners 02. And I have enabled certificates for these guys. You can actually manage your full PKI within Policy Manager. So I've created a certificate for this user. And this is a certificate that I'm going to pass into DataPower. And DataPower is going to authenticate that against Policy Manager. And if it succeeds, it's going to use that as a user. One more change that I want to make is I want to stop using this anonymous contract because this lets anyone through. And we don't really want that. We only did that earlier because it was simple. I'm going to remove this service from this contract. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to enable a different contract, which is called the SOA Bank Trading Partners Contract. And essentially what this says is that the only folks who can use this contract are folks that are inside the SOA Bank Trading Partners organization. So this could be mortgage companies, this could be third-party data companies who feed information into SOA Bank, whoever it may be. And what we want to do is we want to modify this contract to now let this new stock quote service into DataPower. So we essentially select this like we did before for anonymous. So it's now a member, it's now a member of this contract. We click Activate. We click OK. And that's it. That's what I wanted to do. So just to recap, we attached some additional policy to enable two-way SSL. Then we switched contracts because we want a real name contract. We don't want to use an anonymous, let everyone through. And that's it. And now what I want to do is go back to my administration screen, and I want to get this change over to DataPower. So I go back, and you can see that we now have a new entry. The administration console is saying that this service is now waiting to be deployed. So this will become our second deployment. And I have control over whether or not it gets deployed by whether or not my queue is stopped or started. Right now it's stopped. This allows me to protect my DataPower infrastructure in case I don't want changes to be represented. So all I need to do here is start my queue. Okay, and you can see it's now started, which means we're going to push services. And you can see we're in the middle of deploying this service to DataPower. It takes a couple of seconds, and it's done. So in 3 seconds, we're able to make this change that added this rich new support for two-way SSL. If I refresh my screen, we can see that it was a successful deployment over to DataPower. Okay, and again, we're strictly working in the dev domain now. We're going to take a look at the cluster a little bit later. So with that all in place, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to SOAP UI, and I want to go back to my same client, and I want to send another transaction across. And you can see the service still works. Everything is coming through. And by the way, I should point out that you can see the certificates that are involved. We have the DataPower Appliance Dev, which is the SSL certificate being used on DataPower. And we also have the client cert, which is up here, SOA Bank Trading Partner. So the certificate is being used now, and the transaction is going through. If I go into monitoring, and I click back on logs, and I look at my latest, you can see the contract has now changed. It used to be anonymous, but now we're using a new contract, trading partners. Let me double click on that. And you can see now that we now have a consumer identity authenticated, the local domain SOA Bank Trading Partner. So in the course of processing, DataPower automatically reached out to Policy Manager and asked to authenticate this client cert. Policy Manager authenticated it, told DataPower that it is the SOA Bank Trading Partner. So DataPower let the transaction go through, and then we're now in business, and we now know who the identity is. You know, in the real world, this would be like a mortgage broker or some kind of a third-party company who has a real identity. And if we go to our recorded messages, we're still seeing our messages go through. Okay, so in about another 2 minutes of work, I attached some policy, and in another 4 seconds, we deployed that policy change to DataPower. Now we have brand new functionality. If this is not a big deal for one service, and I think it is a big deal for one service, but if you don't think it's a big deal for one service, think about it for 100 services. If you had 100 services that all needed to do this very same work, think about how easy it would be to simply attach this policy to 100 different services in Policy Manager, see them all get deployed out to DataPower in about a minute, and see all of them up and running, and you get an idea of the power of this way of working with DataPower. Okay, so that shows you the security use case. Before we keep going, any other thoughts or questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Chris Kalamopoulos from HCSC. I just want some clarification. The demo you're doing is an XI50. Are there any other add-ons installed, or are these additional modules that were purchased, or are these native features to the appliance?
Great question. Excellent question. So this is all native. So there's no additional installation. In order to get everything that you're seeing up and running required essentially no work and no changes to DataPower. You simply need to provision a new domain and set the security user. Everything else is handled through the solution. And that's a very important question. It's a very important point because we're doing the same things that you would do natively. So if you go back to the slide that we were showing earlier, we're not changing DataPower. We're not doing things that you wouldn't already do. We're just making it better because we're automating it and we're adding all these new features. So if you were to go and inspect everything that we've deployed to DataPower, you would recognize it. You would say, oh yeah, I see how they're doing it. They're doing it the same way that I would do it. So yeah, definitely a very key point. We leverage the very same stuff that you do, and we leverage the very same IBM best practices to make all of our features work so that you're assured that you're having the very highest quality solution on DataPower. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Good question. All right, so why don't we keep going? The next thing I want to do is I want to talk about deployment, promotion, and I want to talk about clustering. And we're going to do this very, very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But let's make believe that we're in love with this new service. It's very powerful. Does everything that we want. It's great. But we're in a dev environment. We now need to get this out to production. And normally the process of getting services from dev out to production on DataPower can be a little bit trying depending upon what kinds of tools you use for it. And I want to show you that there's an easier way for you to very easily get your services up and make it very, very fast and make it very, very efficient and make it also very, very accurate. So everything that we proved out in dev should be operational very quickly in production. So let's go through the process of actually deploying this very same service out to our production cluster. And for the cluster, we're going to use the second container I talked about earlier. It's this prod cluster on the bottom. And this prod cluster contains 2 different DataPower domains. Before, we just had one in dev because we didn't need the high availability. But now we're going to have 2. Okay? And I want to show you how easy it is to take this very same service with everything that we've been doing so far and get it running on the new cluster. Now, to be 100% precise, this is not exactly the way you would do this in Policy Manager in a real environment. In a real environment, you would actually have a different Policy Manager environment. But other than that, this is very close to what your experience would be. I'm using a single policy manager environment just to keep the demo simple. Okay? So to make this work, all I want to do is click on my cluster, and I want to click Host Virtual Service. And I'm going to go find this new service that we just created and we've been having so much success with in dev. I click Next. I want to choose the front-side handler on the cluster. Click Next. I want to put a context path. We'll use the very same context path that we used for dev, although you could have changed this if you wanted to. And that's about it. Believe it or not, that's all that it takes to get your service from dev to production. And of course, we have one more step. We do need to allow this to go through. So what I want to do is go back to my admin view, and I want to go to my prod, and you can see that we are now deploying the service out to the first production cluster, and it looks like it's done, which is great. I'll refresh, it's done. So in 4 seconds, we got it out to production. If I go to 2, it looks like we just did the same thing. This was even quicker. This took 3 seconds. Okay? And if I refresh, I can see that it was successful and it's ready to go. It doesn't get any easier than that. I can't paint a clearer picture of how much fun you will have with SOA software when you can utilize features like this. Although I might put my foot in my mouth because we have to make sure the service actually works in production. So why don't we give it a try? And in production, the URL access is very much the same. It's just that it's running on different ports. My prod 1 is running on 13.451, and my prod 2 is running on 13.452. So let's go and see if the service is actually running. So let's actually rerun dev just to make sure dev is still running. And it looks like it is. I'm getting back my 2899. And let's go to 451, which is prod 1. And let's run that. And there you go. It's running on prod 1. And let's go to prod 2, 13.452. And let's run that. There you go. So luckily I didn't have to put my foot in my mouth. We fully deployed this sophisticated service out to our production environment. It's working 100% as well as dev was working. We also made whatever fix-up we needed to make in terms of addresses and any other details. You didn't have to worry about making small changes to your environments and so forth. So this is an amazingly easy way for you to tame your environment. If you had 100 services and you had to promote those today, how long would that take? And how much easier would that be if you were using SOA software? So, definitely promotion is a huge point here, as is clustering. And this was a cluster of 2. If you needed a cluster of 4, not a problem. It'll be the same amount of time. If you had a cluster of 4 and 2 were in one data center and another were in another data center, it doesn't take any more time. It doesn't really matter how complex your environment is. We'll tame it for you, and we'll make sure that your services run the first time, every time, exactly as you plan, starting in your development environment. Okay, one last thing that I want to do with this service before we move on to some other topics is I wanted to show you guys how you can make use of your own custom policy. Because some of you may be wondering and saying to yourself that, this is all great, but what if I had to do very special things on DataPower that I'm doing today, sophisticated AAA policy or very specialized things that are very custom to my environment? How do I enable those as well? So that's a great question, and I want to show you how you can do that. To show you, I want to go back to my policy, and by the way, let me turn off my queues. I have a little bit more control here. And what I want to do is I want to start using a new policy that's called SOA Bank Add Date Header Policy. And this is an example of what we call user-defined DataPower policy. And let me go and explain to you how this works. I put a couple of what are called record components in this policy just so I can view message content as the transaction flows through DataPower to see how it gets modified. You wouldn't normally do this in production, but this will be good for a demo. But the key piece here is that I'm using this thing called user-defined DataPower policy component, and I'm using it both on the request and on the response of DataPower. This request configuration maps to the request rule on DataPower. The response maps to the response rule. And if I double-click on this component, I can actually bring in real DataPower configuration. So I can go and browse in my browser to some DataPower export. And this could be some zip file that contains whatever you want. It could be AAA policy. It could be very sophisticated transformation. It could be some very custom things that you're doing. And once I import it in, Policy Manager is going to show me the content. This should look pretty familiar to folks who use DataPower on a daily basis. This is essentially an export directly from DataPower. You don't have to modify it at all. Just give us what you have, and we'll bring it in, and we will store it. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to show something called Add Date Header. This is my own custom DataPower policy. And essentially what it does is it injects a date header into my SOAP header. So not that exciting. Your own things, I'm sure, are much more exciting, but this just gives you an idea of how you can do virtually anything on DataPower. So I've added this date header to both my request and to my response. And all I need to do is go back to my service, and I want to attach it so that I can now include my custom functionality on the DataPower appliance. So I go back to our friend policy attachment. I choose this policy. I click Apply. And by the way, sorry, let me quickly turn off my queues again. I keep forgetting to turn off my queues. I want to turn them off just so I have a little bit more control. Looks like I was too late. Automatically, we're deploying out to cluster node 2. We should be deploying, or we're waiting on cluster node 1. And we are waiting on dev. So of course, because this changes all 3 environments, we have to redeploy. What I want to do is now turn on my queue, and that's going to deploy everything we saw before, plus this new custom policy to DataPower, and hopefully we'll get all the benefits from earlier, and we'll get this new custom. And we can see it's done in 5 seconds. We go back to our other nodes. Actually, let's turn on node 1 again. And let's wait for this guy to deploy. And if we check node 2, we see that he's done. So essentially all 3 guys are done. Okay? And I think we're ready to go. So with this new policy in place, I should be able to call all 3, and they should all now have a custom DataPower configuration that adds a date header to the messages. Let's try node 1. Let's try dev. And you can see the message is pretty much the same, but now magically we have an SOA date header with the current date, 10/55/18. If I send a second transaction, this gets updated, 10/55/29. Okay? So we've now pushed out straight to all of our DataPower nodes, everything that was needed. If I go back to Policy Manager and go back to monitoring, you can also see how the message is being changed on DataPower. Let me just go to my latest log. And if I go to my actual logs, you can see I have a lot more log information. I have the message before the date header, and then I have the message after, and you can see it's now been injected for the back end. And then on the response, I have my response before, and I have it after. That's really, really powerful, and you can now define your policy, bring it into Policy Manager, share it with as many services as you want. We'll take care of pushing it out in 6 seconds to every DataPower appliance that has this service, that's using the service and that's using this policy. So a very, very powerful way for you to include virtually anything you want in your DataPower service. So that wraps up our stock quote side. Any thoughts there before we move on?
Actually, this is Shuman from HCSC. I have a quick question. What I would like to know, how much, basically the monitoring stuff that you just have shown, is it possible for showing the memory usage and CPU usage for a particular operations?
Sure, that's a great question. We don't have breakdowns per CPU, per memory. DataPower doesn't provide that information. And in general, we don't strive to monitor and manage low-level appliance aspects, things like memory usage and CPU and so forth. Remember, we're using SOA software to turbocharge DataPower for SOA. So we're very, very service-centric. A lot of tools out there that you can use to monitor these lower-level aspects. But the area that we're solving for you is the ability to monitor at the service level, that you have a bird's eye view of exactly what's happening per service.
No, that's fine. So in the service level, the operations that you are calling when the request is coming through the DataPower flow is using some kind of memory. In the service level also, can this tool show that memory usage for that operation?
Sure. Sure, that's a good question. So no, it does not show that. So we do not attach things like CPU and memory. Generally, that information is not available from DataPower, so there's really no way to say exactly how much CPU a particular service is consuming.
No, but what about the memory? I think you were talking about XI50 device, right? So right now in HCSC we use XI52, and I can see that each of the service that can show us that what kind of memory usage that is using in the past 1 minute or 10 minutes or like that. So
Sure.
is this tool capturing those information for XI52 if we integrate with XI52 devices?
Sure. So no, we do not capture that information, and normally the best route there is to use some of the existing tools from IBM and others in order to monitor those lower level aspects. So we definitely don't capture per memory or CPU information for each service.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a great question. It's a good question. But just bear in mind that we are very focused at the service level and not so much on the lower level management.
Actually, I joined a little bit late, maybe 5-10 minutes back. So what other special features that it provides in the service level? I just saw your last slide that you show that it can add the header dynamically from this policy manager tool to the existing flow and deploy it, right? So what I understood from the discussion that I heard for last few minutes, that it could be used, this tool can be used for promoting a flow from environment to environment easily. But what other features this tool provides? Can you just give me a quick summary?
Sure, absolutely. So we provide a wealth of features across the board. Virtually anything that you want to do in an SOA service on DataPower, we can help you with. That includes things like monitoring, clustering, many different types of security. We support orchestration, we support transformation, we support mediation, we support REST-based services and SOAP-based services. So really, virtually anything you're trying to do in an SOA context, we can support you.
Now, consider a case like for promoting from one environment, a dev environment, we are promoting a MQ flow, which has different queue names in dev environment, and in test or prod, it is going to be different queue names. So can we use this tool to automatically pick up those queue names, or how can you do that?
Absolutely. We provide support for that as well. Unfortunately, we're not too much time to go into all these different features, and I really need to move on. But yes, we can do that, and we can also definitely talk more offline about all your different use cases. So just think of us as the solution that will let you do virtually anything you need to do on DataPower in terms of SOA, and we can definitely talk offline and explain how for all your different scenarios.
Okay. Thank you.
But great questions, and we'll continue to talk. All right, it is the top of the hour, and we got through a lot, which is great. There are a lot more things that I still want to show, so I realize that some folks may have to drop, but I think it might be worth it to keep going here. So what I'd love to do is, if you guys do need to drop, no worries, and we can talk offline on some of the areas that I'm not able to show you right now. But for those who can stay, please do stay. We have a lot of exciting stuff. We're going to move into REST. But this is a great breaking point if you have to go, because we're essentially finished with a lot of the SOAP stuff, and we're going to start talking about REST now. So with that, and by the way, from a time standpoint, probably I'll need another 15 minutes to get through everything. So I do appreciate if you're able to stay. I do appreciate your ability to take out extra time. So what I want to do here now is, you guys have seen a lot in terms of SOAP, and what I want to do is just move into REST. REST is a new exciting area for all of you guys and for the industry. REST is starting to be adopted in a big way, and we support REST in a very big way. We make REST services very easy on DataPower. Today, you might spend quite a bit of time futzing around with the multi-protocol gateway in order to get REST services to work and mapping URLs and so forth. We do this very easily. Your experience is basically the same as SOAP, and I want to show you some of that now. And so we're going to walk through two things. We're going to walk through a basic REST service, and then we're going to walk through a REST to SOAP. So two very exciting topics. So why don't we dive in? And again, we'll try to move quickly so we can get to the end here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start working with another service here. We were working with this SOAP service down here. Now let's work with this REST service. The difference between a REST service and a SOAP service in Policy Manager is essentially its interface. So in terms of the overall service experience, it's going to look very similar. If I go to my Operations tab, you can see the operations look a little bit different. I have things like a get account details and put account details. So these are mapping to the HTTP verbs, get and post and put and delete and so forth. But that's really the only difference. Other than that, your experience working with REST is very similar to working with SOAP, and all the things that we discussed about for SOAP in PM, in Policy Manager, really do apply to REST. So, you're not going to have to learn some new thing in order to get REST working. So what I want to do is something very similar to what we've done with SOAP. I want to take my physical service, and I want to virtualize it on DataPower. This is exactly what we did before with SOAP. So I want to click on Virtualize Service. And just like before, we'll use the pattern of DP for the name, meaning that it will be deployed to DataPower. I click Next, select Container Later, click Finish. And congratulations, we have a brand new REST service. Very, very easy to virtualize on DataPower. And what I want to do now is I want to do something similar to what I did with SOAP. I want to add some policy. And we'll fast forward this, and we'll get straight to the cut straight to the chase in terms of security. I want to add some REST-based security. So I want to add basic auth, which is a very popular security for REST. So I'm going to add a REST basic auth policy and a transport policy. I also want to add our friend auditing. And bear in mind, it's the very same policy as for SOAP. So again, the reuse here is amazing. Once you get a policy working and you like it and it works, you can roll it out to the entire enterprise. You don't have to go and recreate things multiple times, and you can describe it very, very simply. So I click Apply. And I know I haven't shown you policy before. Let me quickly show you what a policy looks like. Let's go to SOA Bank Auditing, for example. This is an example of a auditing policy. You can see you don't have to figure out how to make auditing work. You just have to tell us what you want. I can go in and I can modify this screen, and I can make changes to how I want auditing to work. And this is how all of our policy works. It's declarative. You don't have to solve the problems. You just have to say how you want us to solve the problem. Okay? So getting back to my REST service, I have my different policies attached now. And my next step, as you can imagine, is to deploy. So let's go find the DataPower appliance that I want to go to. I want to go to Dev. So I go to Dev, and I go to Hosted Services, and I click on Host Service. This is my second service. I choose Services. I choose REST, because we already hosted our SOAP service. And we're going to deploy REST to a different front-side handler. We're going to put it on 13460. So let's choose that guy. Okay, click Next. And again, we'll just use the service name as the context path. You don't have to do that, but let's do it. Let's finish. Okay, and there you go. We are the proud new parents of a REST service. Let's go back to our administrative console, and let's approve the deployment to DataPower. So I'm going to go back to my dev, and you can see this brand new service is now waiting to be deployed. I'm sorry, actually it's being deployed. I keep forgetting to turn off my queue. So there you go. 4 seconds later, we are the proud new parents of a REST service running on DataPower, but we're not quite done yet. Let's actually cross our fingers, and let's hope that it actually works. One last thing that I want to do is I want to add a contract. Remember, need to use contracts. Let's make it a part of the same contract we used last time for SOAP. So let's choose this REST service for REST, just like we did for SOAP. And let's approve it. And the way this works, by the way, is this is using basic auth, so it's requiring the client to pass in username, password. And once again, we're going to make use of SOA Bank trading partners, our identities down here, to authenticate the user. So essentially with basic auth, you have to pass in credentials. We're going to choose to pass in these credentials here, and then contract authorize these credentials. So with that, we're now deployed. Let's go back to SOAP UI, and let's switch gears to our REST service. And you can see the URL that I'm using here. It's an HTTP GET, and I'm using 13460, which is our REST port on DataPower. And then the way this works is you simply do a GET on account/account ID, in this case 12345, and that becomes the basis of the REST request. There's no body here like SOAP because this is a GET on a REST. So let's send this through to DataPower. Let's see what we get back. And we get back a REST response, which is fantastic. And if you can see the content type here is JSON. So I configured this to use JSON. So we fully support JSON on DataPower. And you can actually see the response from my back end. I'm getting account information. The ID is 123456. Here are some details. You can actually see it a little bit nicer in the JSON view. But fundamentally, the service is working, which is fantastic. And of course, we had all the same benefits as the SOAP service. We had the contracts, we had the monitoring, we had the security. So let's go to our service and let's go check out monitoring. I'm sorry, of course, we also had real-time charts. You can see the transaction coming through. Alerts will be functional. So far, DataPower is happy, so no alerts. We go to logs. We have one log on the get account details. Double-click. You can see who was authenticated, that same user. So the bank trading partner, that was based on the basic auth. We go to recorded messages. We can see the request message, which is an XML version of the get. And you can see the response message, which is the JSON from the backend. So here we are, once again, 5 minutes later, we have a fully functional REST service running. It's got security. It supports JSON. It supports the backend and so forth. So, essentially across the board, we're getting a fully functional service. I could then promote this out to my production service, and I'll have a fully operational service in production as well. So this shows you how easy it is. A lot of different features that I'd love to show you in addition to this on REST, but we are a bit out of time. But that gives you an idea of our support for REST-based services. Now you can go out and deploy 100 REST-based services very, very easily and ensure that they're all going to work very, very consistently. Any thoughts on that before we move on to our final piece? All right, great. About 5 more minutes. Thanks for your patience, and we'll close things up. So the final piece I want to do is actually my favorite, and I'm really crossing my fingers that this is all going to work because this is a complex use case. We are going to do a REST to SOAP. So imagine you have a large back end. You have hundreds of SOAP services. In the brave new world of mobile and new standards, you want to expose those as REST. You want to do it on DataPower. You want all the security and the monitoring and everything else. But that's challenging to do. Luckily, SOA software offers REST to SOAP out of box. So you can take any backend SOAP service and you can easily expose it as a REST service. I'm going to show you how to do that. And a good SOAP service for us to expose is the very same SOA bank stock quote service that we exposed earlier in the presentation. It could be any SOAP service, but this is not a bad one to start with because we already know it speaks SOAP, and we already know that we want to convert it to REST. So how do we do that? Pretty easy. I'm going to create a new virtual service, and this time I'm going to model it on my own, and I'm going to choose an existing WSDL that models this, this interface. So in this case, it's going to be this SOA bank stock quote REST service. So I click open, and I click next, and it asks for a name. And let's use the same naming standard, DP, for data, because this is a DataPower service. We're not virtualizing an existing service. We're creating it from scratch. Click next. Select container later, as usual. Click finish. So we have a brand new virtual service. Now, because we didn't virtualize any other service, this guy has no backend. We need to give it a backend, and that's very easy to do. I'm going to go to my operations. And this operation has get stock quote, as you can expect, but this is a JSON response. This is not SOAP. But there's a get stock quote response. I click in there, and then I have a routing section of my service. I click modify, and now I can choose any service that I want DataPower to route to on the back end. We're going to choose the stock quote service, as we discussed earlier. It makes sense. That's our one back-end SOAP service. Click next. We choose the actual operation that we want to route to. We want to route to get stock quote. Click next. Click finish. And now we are routing to our back end. Like usual, I want to do policies. Let's go open up our policy friends, and why don't we just attach our auditing. We'll leave security out for now to keep it simple. So I'm only attaching auditing. And of course, we need to do contracts like usual. So let's go back to we'll do anonymous because we're not doing any security, but normally you would have security. You'd have basic auth or OAuth or whatever it is that you need. And I want to manage contract scope. I want to go in and I want to choose this new REST service. Okay, so now he is a part. And then one more thing that I want to do is I want to add a transformation. We haven't talked about transformations yet, so this is a good opportunity. I want to, I'm sorry, I didn't do this right. This is not my service. That's the back end. Manage contract scope. And I want my DataPower service to be part, not the back end. Activate contract. And the last piece is my policy. I do want to transform my request, because remember, my request is going to be a get, the REST get, but it needs to become a SOAP. Now, we automatically take care of making it SOAP, but you do have to format as an XML document that matches your SOAP schema. So all I need to do is go to my policy, and I've actually created a transformation that I want to use. It's a very simple transformation. It's right over here. I'm calling it SOA Bank stock quote REST to SOAP transform. I'll actually show you what the transform looks like. We're using something called a data transformation component. This is your ability to add any type of transformation to DataPower. We're going to double click on it, and you can actually see the content. Content is very simple. We're simply putting out an XML document, and we are extracting the stock quote symbol from the REST request. Okay? So fundamentally, we're transforming a REST GET into a message that's ready for SOAP. Okay? I'll also put some monitoring in place because I want to monitor and see the results of the transformation. You wouldn't normally do this in production, but we're going to do it here. So now all I want to do is take this policy, and I want to attach it to my REST service in DataPower. So I'm going to go find it and attach it. There you go. Click apply, and that's it. I'm pretty much done. Last step, like usual, is to find the DataPower infrastructure that I want to host this on. Let's start in dev. This will be our third service. Host on DataPower. Choose my REST service. Sorry, stock quote REST, the middle one. Click next. You guys have seen this before, so I think this is pretty clear. I want to choose my REST frontside handler, 13460. Click next. We'll use the same location as the name. Click finish. By the way, this is also showing you how easy it is for you to host multiple REST services on the same DataPower port, which is always a good thing. So there you go. I now have it. If I switch back to my admin console, you can see that we're now deploying to dev. And 4 seconds later, we're done. So we have our brand new REST to SOAP service running on DataPower. The last step is to actually see it working. So let's go back to SOAP UI. And this is a complex service, so I'm really crossing my fingers here that this will work. But let's go to our third part of SOAP UI. That's this middle guy, stock quote REST. I click on the request. And I'm going to use a very similar URL as we used before, but now it has stock quote / IBM to get the stock quote for IBM. Let's click send. Okay, and you're getting an error. Let me try this one more time. And another error. Let's quickly see if we can troubleshoot. I don't want to burn too much time on this. But let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. We can use the alerting features to try and understand. You can see we have some recent alerts here. So let's quickly go through this. AAA authorization. And it looks like we're having contract issues. Let's go back and double check our contracts. This should be included. Oh, I think I put the wrong contract. Let's try and modify this. Manage contract scope. And we want to put our stock quote REST. Sorry, wrong service. This is the third time now I have to make these mistakes here. Let's put the right service in so that contracts will succeed for this service. Let's now go back to SOAP UI, drive it through, and there you go. It's now running. And you can see we're getting a JSON response back even though we're going to a SOAP service. Now if I put it in a nice view, you can see we're getting stock quote response and the actual value. So we've automatically transformed the SOAP message into JSON, which is really pretty amazing. And if we go back to the service and we look at monitoring, you can see how the service is changing inside DataPower in order to mediate with the back end. Let me make sure I keep my services straight. Stock quote REST, yep. Let's go, and you see we have the anonymous contract. If I double click, you can see we have a bunch of messages here. We have the message that came in, and then we transformed it, and you can see we transformed the GET into a SOAP, a message ready for SOAP. Then we wrapped it in SOAP. Then we sent it to the very same back end that we used earlier in the day. Then we got the response back, and the response is XML, as you can see, and we automatically transformed XML into JSON. So this is an example of mediation. Very happy that it actually works on the call. This is extremely powerful. So you can imagine, once again, you have 100 SOAP backend services. Your boss is asking you to expose those as REST for the iPhone and Android world, and you need to do it in a month. Ask yourself how quickly you can do it with SOA software. You can probably do it not in a month. You can probably do it in a couple of days if you needed to. So extremely powerful pattern. This is only one of many patterns that we support, but it shows you how easily you can solve your different problems on DataPower, regardless of REST or SOA. So that pretty much concludes the demo. Let me quickly go back to the WebEx if I can. And let's just close things out, and then we can do questions. Hopefully everyone can see the screen. So hopefully this is very useful for everyone. We showed a lot of very powerful use cases. We showed you how you can use SOA software to use DataPower for SOA. We're going to have some exciting additional webinars coming up, topics such as orchestration, Web3MQ, Systems mainframe, API management, and OAuth, advanced security patterns, and mediation. So a lot more to come in the coming months where we want to show with you even more of what we can do. This only scratches the surface. So definitely stay tuned and look forward to those upcoming webinars. And that's pretty much it. So, do visit us at SOA.com. Also have my email here, simon.barrere@SOA.com if you want to reach out directly. But it was definitely very nice chatting with everyone and hope you got a lot out of it. Why don't we just close with any questions and thoughts, and then we can finally wrap up. So are there any questions here?
Yes. Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Augie from New York Presbyterian Hospital, and I want to ask if how long does it take to train a person on your solution?
Great question. We have training programs that are short as a couple of days. So fundamentally, the training program includes how do you use Policy Manager to do a lot of the things that I'm showing today? How do you work with virtualization and policy? As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Everything that I've been doing today is basically what you will be doing and nothing more. There's nothing else missing in terms of what it takes to get up and running. And then there will be some amount of training on our Policy Manager for DataPower product, which is what's driving a lot of this. So, literally within a couple of days, you can get up and running and start being successful in your environment.
What form of training is available? In person, online?
Sure, we offer a number of different types of training programs. So both of those are options. We can do training over things like WebEx and in person. Why don't you reach out and we can give you full details in terms of what's available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's I see a question in the WebEx. Are there guidelines or formula for performance and capacity planning so that we can use the tool to orchestrate services for business processes and balance workload? So a lot of great questions there. In terms of performance and capacity planning, definitely, you need to make sure that DataPower is up to snuff in terms of what you're planning to do. So that's, very much a DataPower thing, and I'm sure you've already gotten good at understanding how to make sure that DataPower performs and can reach capacity. Again, we're using native DataPower here, so you're not going to see anything very different from what you already do today. So definitely on the DataPower side, it's very familiar to you. In terms of SOA software, we offer full performance and capacity support, so we can support any kind of workload that you guys are dealing with. In terms of orchestrating services, that's going to be a subject of an upcoming topic. We actually support orchestration. It's very sophisticated and very powerful in terms of what you can do. In terms of balancing workload, we support all types of support there. We can use DataPower to balance a backend system. We can cluster. We have a lot of different aspects that we support in terms of making sure that your environment is going to support everything that you're trying to do. So a lot of great questions there. I hope I answered all of them. If not, please chime in on the call. Any other thoughts or questions?
I have a question. I see a lot of governance in here. How does this work with WSRR, for example?
Great question. So you have a number of different options with WSRR. WSRR is good for governance of essentially areas outside of runtime. So WSRR can be leveraged in order to create a catalog of those services that you want. So we can include WSRR as part of the full lifecycle. We actually didn't talk about lifecycle very much on the call at all, and that's an entire topic unto itself. We provide full lifecycle support from end to end. So if you are using WSRR, let's talk, and we can explain in detail about how we normally approach that. But overall, the message is that we do support full lifecycle across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another question in the WebEx. Can we deploy the service to DataPower in the particular domain in DataPower? The answer is yes. You can deploy anywhere you want. You choose which part of your DataPower infrastructure you want your services hosted on and which domains. You have full control over that, and you can make sure that you are targeting exactly where you want. You can even move services very easily. If you're on domain 1, you need to move it to domain 2, not a problem. You can do that in about 5 minutes. Hopefully that answers the question. Next question on the WebEx is how much is the software? Please do contact us. We can share with you the license details. Depends upon how large your environment is and so forth. So do contact us and we can help you understand pricing and licensing. Next question, the monitoring functionality is enabled in the DataPower or the SOA software. Great question. It's in both. We teach DataPower how to monitor, and we build that into the solution, and we also integrate it directly with SOA software's product set. So it's fully built into everything. We fully integrate it. It's ready to use out of box. There's no additional effort on your part whatsoever to get monitoring up and running, and it's going to work the first time, every time, because it's fully automated. Okay, other questions? These are all really, really good questions.
So with DataPower patterns that they've come out with in version 6, doesn't that ease some of the pain that you're easing as well?
It's a great question. We get asked that a lot by DataPower customers, trying to put together plans for the future. I mean, the pattern feature, it's a powerful feature. It's a good introduction. It's not trying to do what we do. Fundamentally, what we do is we remove the burden of lifecycle management and service creation and service maintenance and service policy and so forth. We give you automated tooling that does everything out of box. The patterns is a useful way for you to take some existing services and sort of turn them into templates and then use those to clone and so forth. You still have to create the services. If you go to the deck that we had earlier, you still have to figure out how to solve the different problems around monitoring and so forth. You still have to figure out clustering. So fundamentally, the DataPower patterns feature is not going to solve these problems, but it could be useful for you in your environment. So I do think it's a pretty good feature, but it's definitely not trying to solve these issues here. Does that help?
Yeah, and I realize your patterns on huge steroids. I mean, it's more than
absolutely
catching on to that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. So just think about it again. You have 100 services that you need to deploy on DataPower across 50 DataPower appliances. Going through the demo today, you can imagine how quickly you can do that. Just kind of do the comparison with an out-of-box DataPower solution. We actually have cost-benefit models that we can share with you that kind of compare what it would be like today, how you do things today, and then with SOA software. Literally, it's a factor of 10 to 100 in terms of how much we can improve your environment. So yeah, steroids is not a bad term to use.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a few more on the WebEx. Let me go through these. First question is there any predefined policies available in the SOA software? The answer is yes. We ship with out-of-box policies, but bear in mind that all of our policies, in a sense, are predefined because the basic structure of all policies there, things like monitoring and security, so you're simply customizing them. You are parameterizing them for a particular use case. So they're all there. You can also extend Policy Manager with additional policy. So the short answer is there's a lot out of box. Everything that we saw today, you can fundamentally get up and running immediately out of box in terms of policy. You can also add more later. Hopefully that answers that question. Next question is when will you make the slides available? So yeah, we can definitely reach out and try to make these slides available to you guys. I believe we're also recording this, so we can make the recording available. Next question is, do you integrate with WSO2 governance registry? Will the software work with WSO2? So we don't have specific support for WSO2. Again, we have a full lifecycle solution. So we can handle the entire lifecycle from cradle to grave, all the way from planning your services to getting them on DataPower and then retiring them. With that said, there might be opportunities to have different components in WSO2 work within our environment. But fundamentally, in terms of what we offer, we will automate and give you a full solution across the board. Next question, we saw monitoring capabilities. Is your solution also suited to keep historical data and perform statistics? Great questions. We store everything in a standardized relational databases of your choice, Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, and so forth. You can use standard relational tools to mine that data. We'll store it as long as you want. In fact, you store it as long as you want. You only purge data if you want to. So yes, that data is all absolutely available. And in terms of roll-ups, we do roll-ups out of box. So we can actually say that over the last month, a particular service on DataPower experienced its peak performance, peak throughput at a certain time, and so forth. So definitely, we do metrics and roll-ups. And you can do your own data mining in the future. You can offload that off your Oracle database and into a data warehouse, and you can do whatever you want with it. So we offer very, very sophisticated support for monitoring. Okay, let's keep going. Next question, the transformation you used in demo has to be developed in DataPower. Answer is no. It's not a bad idea to develop it in DataPower if you have very specific DataPower functionality. So if you're making use of native DataPower features, you probably want to develop it in DataPower. But we take any XSLT. You can give us out-of-box, straight XSLT, put it into Policy Manager, and we will add it to your services. So it's definitely your choice in terms of how you want to do that. Another question, how about using different front-end handlers? Absolutely. You can have as many as you want. You can have 5 or 10 or 15, and we support HTTP, HTTPS, MQ. So we have very, very rich support. You can model where your services get deployed to any which way you like. So definitely a lot of different features here. Okay, next question. Examples of the types of policies that can be implemented using Policy Manager and some example custom policies. So yeah, we kind of touched on this earlier. Out of box, we offer enough to solve most of your problems. It's a matter of taking our policy and customizing it for a particular use case, and that's what we showed today. Moving forward, you can also generate new policies and so forth, but definitely, we have enough out of box to solve a very, very large number of use cases. It may well be that we can solve all of your use cases using out of box, but of course we're extensible, so you can easily add. And do bear in mind that, policy authoring is very, very simple. There's no development, there's no coding, nothing like that. So even if you do develop your own pieces, it's very, very quick. It doesn't take a lot to develop all the policies that we showed today in the demo. Okay, moving on from there. Is there any link or document white paper for the product? Absolutely. Please go to www.soa.com. We have data sheets. We have white papers. We have a landing page for DataPower, so we have some great material there. And of course, you can also reach out to us if you have even more specific questions about the solution. All right, looks like that's it for questions in the WebEx. Any other questions on the line? All right, fantastic. So I guess we can close from here. And just wanted to thank everyone for your time. Those who stayed over, really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedules to stay with us. I hope it was worth it, seeing all the cool REST functionality. We are a half an hour over, so it's really great for those who stuck behind. So I'd like to thank you again. You have our address, SOA.com. You have my email, simon.barrera@SOA.com, so please do feel free to reach out to us. Other than that, hopefully this was very useful for you, and you got an idea of how SOA software can help you to utilize DataPower for SOA. And we are recording this, so I believe, I'm not sure on this, but I believe we're going to make this available to you afterwards, and we can also try and make the deck available to you afterwards as well. So with that, thank you all again, and we'll be talking shortly.
Thank you.